really what I do at Enable is really try and help, I think with the conversations we've been having all day, helping people to understand what is a good practice, what is a good process. Andrew mentioned about that movement from being kind of reactive to strategic. And I think the presenters we've had up so far, it's the first time I've heard those stories. Wow. You know, it shows that actually rebates can actually be positive. We don't all need rebate therapy, thankfully. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk through the numbers. We've done the theory. We know rebates can be good, but how do we do it? So Jerry did tell a lie. It's not 30 minutes, it's 45 minutes between this and the bar. But what I'm going to highlight here is real-world scenarios that we can take away and apply. Some of them might not apply to your business, others will. So it's really just trying to think about, do we do this? How could we apply this to our business? So the first one I'm going to look at here is protecting profit. So every rebate, in my opinion, should have a purpose. A rebate without a purpose means you're just paying out a rebate. So earlier, when Michael talked about the 2 million they cut back, that I refer to as a bad rebate without a purpose. So if you want to protect profit, so this is that volume discount trade-off. And hopefully everybody can see this, but in essence, what we've got here is we've got our purchase terms where we get a 40% discount. So we've got a total list price of what we're buying of 100,000. We've got 100 units, 1,000 units at a list price of 100. So we're going to pay 60,000 to our supplier for those goods. The original sales terms, we were going to give the customer a 20% discount, which means we were going to sell to the customer at 80. Make 20,000 profit, everything's great. But we know customers want a discount. If we just gave them the discount, so to give them to what they wanted, they're now paying 76,000, we've dropped our profit to 16. Everything pretty simple, straightforward. We now need 25% more sales to cover that discount and get us back to the same pound note profit we were at before. So this, when I talked about protecting profit, this isn't a percentage gain, this is purely pound notes in the bank. Doing the maths, well, we know we need another 20,000 of sales, which would take the rebate target, would target the customer at 100,000 if they wanted that price, and we'd give them a 5% rebate. So that is very simply the maths behind, if a customer wants a cheaper price, how much volume are you going to ask from them to get them back to that net price per unit? Because that 5% rebate is the equivalent to what we achieve by giving them the extra 4 as a discount. What we talked about earlier as well about arming our sales teams, it's really important that sales teams understand these trade-offs. This shouldn't be a blind negotiation where the customer has a price in their mind and the rebate number miraculously appears in the negotiation, but there's no numbers behind it. If they have this, and you can build these out in matrix grids, or you can give sales teams calculators, they can immediately understand how your customer is then you're paying them for their performance and not for their negotiation promises. So quite a straightforward scenario. And if we look at this scenario and take it, compared the two different ways, there's a few different outcomes this could have worked. In the original scenario, with no discount, we were making 25% margin right at the bottom line. Discounted, we took our margin down to 21.1%. So we were prepared to offer a rebate, keep us at 21.1%, but make the same amount of money. There's a statistic up here which you won't be able to read, 58%. So we did a piece of work with one of our partners, and what they established was that 58% of the time, customers do what they tell you they're going to do. So 58% of the time, they'll give you the volume. So if we look at this scenario, if you'd have given them the discount they wanted, and they only gave you 58% of the volume, you've dropped your numbers massively. You know, and that's really going to hurt your pound note profit. If you'd have incentivized them, you've held your margin at 21.1, you've got your 20,000 cash in the bank, so you're great. But if they didn't do what they said they were going to do, you've held all that money back. You've now got a 25% margin. So it just goes to show it can be a win-win, or if the customer does what they say they want, but it's a win-lose in your favor if they don't, as opposed to it being the other way around. But that's about pound note profit. This one's now about percentages and protecting margin, but looking at it not from a sales perspective, but from a procurement perspective. So we start with, again, a simple scenario. We have a list price of 1,000, and we have a discount of 50%, so we buy the product for 500. Our sales team are cost plus. If your sales team are cost plus, your procurement team probably control your margin, and they might not even realize that they have that influence because they control your cost. So in this scenario, you've got a sales team who mark up by 25%. So everybody's happy with that. Your procurement team come along and they get a better deal. They've done their job. Everybody is celebrating. The problem is you're now paying $450 for the goods. They're going to mark that up by 25%. You're now making less money. You're only making 113 now. And so from that perspective, it might not even be known because your bottom line margin's exactly the same, 20%. It might not appear on a changing in a margin report. It's just your sales are down. Your sales are down because you're paying less for the goods. And these things can slip through the net. If you work, for example, in an industry where there's so many different products, I came from construction where you imagine how many different things go into the construction industry. Prices do go up and down. So really, the influence your procurement team can have is colossal. So what you would do in that scenario is don't give your buying benefit to your customer, you keep it. So you ask for a rebate instead of an invoice discount. You hold your net cost, you've still got the benefit, but your sales team are going to mark up from the invoice price. And if you look at the bottom, you've made a whole lot more profit and your margin's gone up. It sounds simple, but even in great big PLCs, I see it where this is kind of overlooked. And the net prices, they have to be credible. And I'm absolutely, what's the right way to put it, advocate for that invoice price. If your procurement team keep adding another 5% rebate and that invoice price just goes up and up and up. I was chatting to Keith earlier, who's a procurement consultant. And what he was saying to me is, yeah, you get what we class as a toxic rebate, a rebate that actually is undoing everything. It's stifling trade. It's making salespeople have to guess and trade blindly. You don't want to get there. This is about protecting your buying benefit, not making it hard for your sales team to operate. So there's two simple scenarios how rebates can be used positively, but I think you can also see how they can go wrong very quickly. And again, it's doing the maths. Here's a rare scenario but where I've seen rebates used really, really effectively. Volatile pricing. So we've all seen volatility. If you're at a level of volatility almost daily, you don't want to be changing your price book every single day. If you're a distributor, for example, where something's commodity priced. So you could have something like this, where the market price of goods changes daily, something maybe traded on the London Metal Exchange, something like that, where there's that much volatility. And what I saw was they called it a net back rebate. And what they did, well, that colour looks terrible. That's the market price of the goods, the bottom bar. The manufacturer takes the bit in the middle. They say, I will just mark up by, say, 30%. But what we will do is we will charge you $1,800 on invoice. Every time you buy from us, it's $1,800. But at the end of the month, we'll settle it back to what was the prevailing rate on the day. Because both of you have that information, it's going to be something that's traded as a commodity. It means that you have simplicity in your price book. It also means to your end customer, you might decide we want to take the volatility. We don't want our customer to be constantly querying prices. We had that, for example, in timber, where timber prices can be quite volatile. Well, a lot of tradespeople, they've quoted people to do works on their homes. If we can take some of that volatility away from them, they're going to trade with us more for that kind of thing. So these kind of pricing arrangements can be incredibly effective in terms of taking volatility out and making it easier just to trade as two businesses. Now we're going to look at improving margin. This is probably, well, this is definitely my favorite in terms of a practical use of a rebate. And this is based on very realistic scenarios. So in here, we've got two product ranges, A and B. And I think it's common, where we have most of our business is not where we have most of our margin. So we've got product range A, the manufacturer's making 25% on product A, and they're making 45% on B. The distributor, and I'd love to be a distributor making the same amount of margin as my manufacturer, that never seemed to happen, is making 25 and 45 as well. And what happens in this scenario is the distributor has been challenged. So the procurement person in the distributor has been told, you need to get that 25% margin up. So they come along and they make a proposal to the manufacturer. They say to the manufacturer, I want a rebate on product range A because I'll then make 26.5%. The manufacturer, in some cases, they might provide it. It's probably not going to help the relationship. And now their margin's gone down to 23. And I think in many scenarios, that's the negotiation ends there. That's the end of the process. That, to me, was like one side won, one side lost. The manufacturer comes along, and if they're clued up, and like what Michael was saying earlier, if you're looking at the numbers and you understand what you're trying to do, manufacturers actually realize something. They've realized, at the moment, the product range A and B are sold in a ratio of 90-10. And they know they should go out in the ratio of 80-20. But a disruptor's come in, and they're taking market share of the higher margin range. So they come along, and they say to the distributor, we like this scenario. We want you to go to, product range A, you keep selling the same amount, but you should be selling double what you're selling in B, and get it to an 80-20 split. But to do that, you're going to have to drop your margin to 35% to be competitive and to beat this disruptor. So if you're the distributor, you're now looking at that going, so you want me to drop my margin by 0.3%, even though, yes, I'm making more money. And the manufacturer's saying, yeah, absolutely, because I'll take my margin from 27 to 29.1. So you can actually see they've got conflicting objectives. If you combine the objectives, manufacturer pays the rebate, the distributor drops their margin to 35%, and they get the split to 80-20. Distributors, they decided they're going to take all the rebate and just have it against product A. Just really an illustration thing. They've taken their margin up to 26.9. They've achieved what they wanted. What's even better is they've really boosted their overall margin. Manufacturer, they've gone from 27 to 27.1. You know, they're hopefully happy. Profit numbers are up because they're selling more of the high margin range. And I try to make this realistic. I get it that you're not going to sell more without probably dropping a price. So in this scenario, they've decided to compete together against a disruptor in the marketplace, drop the margin to 35, and do more business that makes more sense. That's an example of where the two sides align, and that's been mentioned today. Give the customer what they want, but also make sure you're getting what you want. So the numbers can work. There is, these numbers I don't think are unrealistic when we look at margins in certain industries. So that is a really, really powerful way. And what you want to be doing in this scenario is working with your procurement teams, your sales teams, and especially, if you're the numbers people, make sure that they're armed with this. You can look at this in so many different ways and just do the maths and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, go back to the drawing board. But model these things so you can go armed to a negotiation with give and take, because I think that's really important. So far we've talked about margin. Now we're looking at growth. So we're going to start with we're going to go to a bit of accounting here, because I'm going to put overheads in. Because as pricers, salespeople, procurement, we talk margins, gross profits, but actually there's this whole other thing. All of our overheads are fixed costs. And we really should factor those in when we're making pricing decisions. So we've got a variable cost of 10, we sell the product for 15, we've got a contribution of 5 per unit. So we're making 33.3% gross. And this is where the accountants will start to geek out, because we've got a break-even chart. So we know our fixed costs are $1 million. So we have to make $1 million gross profit just to stay still. So we do a contribution line, which goes up for every unit by 5. Where it crosses is where that's our break-even. But then we have an even more exciting line, which is our operating profit line, which is a bendy line. And where the bendy line crosses at 10% is where we're a 10% return on business. So if we wanted to be 10% return, we'd look at that line, we'd say, right, that's where it meets. We go down and we say, it's about 280,000 units. When we're selling 280,000 units, we are a 10% return business. But you don't just want to sell 280,000 units. You want to create growth. You want to move beyond there. So what we do is we do a load of maths, and it tells us it's actually 285,714 units, or sales of 4.285 million. So we're now armed with two really important numbers. Because if we're going to incentivize our customer, we need those numbers. And what we can then do with these, and this goes back to giving your salespeople the ammunition to effectively trade in the marketplace, be competitive, win business without damaging margin. They could give a non-retrospective rebate, so every unit the customer buys after that 285,000, they'll give them 26% back. So it'll effectively pay £11.11 for a unit instead of 15. So really, really powerful as an incentive. Or you could do it the other way. You could do this as a tiered structure, where what you're going to say is, you typically pick fixed numbers as targets because they're memorable. You say, well, you do 4.5 million in sales, I'll give you 1.1% back on everything. You get to 6 million, I'll give you 6.7% back on everything. And when you do this, if you're not ever going to drop your margin or your gross profit below 10%, because the maths are all done. It means a salesperson can go armed with that information in the absolute confidence that they're not going to erode your margin. So these are kind of the tools that we can put together ourselves, and we can work out how we make more money with confidence. But there is another side to this, and I mentioned earlier about the cost. So I'm actually going to walk through a scenario, a real-world scenario based on my own experience, and how rebates can influence decisions. So if we picture, I'm at Grafton, where I used to work, 2015, and I've got a role, commercial finance, and our CEO says we need to increase margin. He was absolutely adamant that needed to be our target, margin. He wasn't a big fan of chasing volume because his view was that is just as he would put it, a bit of a mugs game. He said customers are fickle. You drop their price, they'll buy from you. You try and increase it again, they go elsewhere. So he said we're going to be a really, really profitable tight ship. So really simplistically, and there was lots of product ranges, lots going on, but I've taken a narrow sample here. We said to our depot managers, increase your margin. They made 20% in the system on bricks and blocks and 10% on insulation. And they were selling at 50-50. We gave them no other information in 2015. Increase your margin. What happened was they did. It kind of went like that. And it did this over 4 or 5 years. We kept challenging them. We used to have all the usual things, price override lists, going out, telling off the salespeople, oh, you shouldn't have sold this for that price, challenging them on everything that was going on. And the whole challenge all the time was increase margin. We didn't know this until about 2019, when we finally paired our buying and our rebates to our sales data, and we connected the dots. That's actually quite generous, because on bricks and blocks we got next to no rebate. On insulation, it was a much bigger number than that. But you kind of get the feel of what we've now realized we've been doing. We've been driving our mix in the wrong direction. And we can't blame the branches for this, because they were just working with what we'd given them. And this was a business turning over, so it was our merchanting UK operations. This was £650 million business. And we took our bottom line percentage from about 6 down to 3.5, because we kept saying focus on margin and only having those first pieces. When we got in 2019 to this piece, and we realized what we'd been doing, where we would actually taken our gross profit down, we came out to the business with a really simple message, because we realized we've conditioned this business to work in a certain way. And what we said was, there's 2 product ranges now. We've got 20, but there's 2. There's the ones we want you to focus on selling, and the ones you can sell it, but really only if the customer wants it. And the ones where we want you to focus on selling, you should win 80% of all quotes. Just do not lose that order. The others, maybe win 20% of all quotes. So branch managers were able to go away and go, okay, so what you're telling me is win this at all costs and trade in that if we need to. We even changed bonus schemes for our salespeople to say, you can sell that all day long, but actually, are you really selling it, or is the customer just buying it? Go out and work for your bonus and sell the things we want you to sell. And what's even better, you can discount those things, because we knew that if they went out and started discounting insulation, we didn't want to stop them trading. We just wanted them to trade in the right areas. They'd discount insulation before, they'll discount it again. So the message was really simple in terms of how we were taking rebate information, digesting it right down into something actionable for a sales team to use. And that was the impact of having procurement on a cost-plus business. It can go horribly wrong, or it can go incredibly well. It really depends on what insights you're giving them. And so as an example, if we'd have gone the right way, we'd have gone from 30.5 to 31.8. But we didn't. And then something we talked about earlier in our CAB session, and I did promise what's the right way to put this, some very exciting finance calculations. So this is arguably the second most important calculation for people who are earning rebates, who hold inventory. The first is, how much am I due from my suppliers? The second is, how much of it should still be sat in inventory and not yet released to my profit and loss account? A lot of businesses get this one wrong. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is because we focus so much on the first calculation that this one almost plays second fiddle. Also, this calculation is just a timing thing. So a lot of senior executives don't get excited about this calculation. It's normally done by the person who is your spreadsheet wizard. You never let them out of the office. They sit in a dark corner. They do this, and they probably do it once or twice a year. They don't even probably know what they're doing. They just hit buttons and numbers come out. So here's a scenario. And if we think about this, so if we think about a grocery store, so we're thinking Tesco. If you think in your mind their shop floor, you've got the fast-moving products, the fresh food, all of that kind of thing. That might account for 20% of their shop floor because they've got loads of aisles of beer for Jerry and the wine section, and then they've got, you know, the frozen products. So you've got fast and slow-moving products. They don't buy in that ratio. You know, they're going to go through a lot more milk, bread, these kind of things. So their purchasing and their stocking profiles are different. So if I was doing this the easy way, in terms of valuing my inventory, I can see that overall my rebate rate for buying is 2.3%. So I take my 2.3%, I apply it to my 460 million, and I say, hey, I need a rebate accrual, or what's still held in my inventory, 10.7 million. In many cases, I see businesses doing that. The problem we've got is, if we actually did it at a granular level, we can see we've got, and I've been very generous here, I would hate to think Tesco has 14 days worth of inventory on fresh produce, but what we've got there now is a more granular calculation. And I think you can probably guess where this is going to go. If we apply that 1% and that 5% to those inventory numbers, it tells us that we should actually have a provision 16.9 million. And that's just on a rebate difference between 1% and 5%. So that is the danger of having a high-level rebate and inventory calculation when mix is a big factor in your business. Again, at Grafton, our inventory rate was 24%. Our buying rate was 16%. Because again, a lot of what we sold, and anybody who's familiar with that industry, you've got a lot of direct-to-site business. Doesn't generally earn a rebate, you never have it in inventory. We did kitchens and bathrooms, low rebate rates, you'd never have it in inventory. We had lots of bricks and blocks, which as I showed earlier, not a lot of rebate on those kind of things. So there's another side to this as well. Rebate in inventory should not be a once-a-year calculation. Because what happens when it's a once-a-year calculation, that mix is moving all of the time. And the problem you've got is, in the top chart, this is calculating your rebate in inventory every 6 months. So on the 6th month, it has to do a big adjustment for everything that's happened. And you think, okay, well, you fixed the data to make this look that way. The bottom line is exactly the same data. That bottom line, though, is calculated monthly. There's no big deviations in that bottom line. You've just maybe got a bit of seasonality, that kind of thing. I know, as a finance director, when I see that top line, if that's what was happening to my P&L, my stakeholders would be out to lynch me. They'd be going, Mark, what on earth's going on? You told me we were making all this profit, and then you've just taken it all away. And so then I start doing all my budgets and my forecasts, and I send everything over to our group head office, saying, actually, it's not looking as good. And then I get to the December, and it does the other thing. Again, I'm not going to be making any friends in my business reporting numbers like that. And I've seen a lot of that where they might call it the rebate adjustment, or you get these kind of things in the business. So the moral of the story here is you want to be calculating this monthly. A couple of reasons it stops this. Another reason is if there's a problem building, you start to see it before the auditors are on site. And it really is about giving your stakeholders quality information. You want your everything you do to inspire confidence in your stakeholders, because what the speakers earlier have said is how they're working with these stakeholders. Well, if you're constantly sending them reports that keep changing and are wrong, they're not going to then listen to you about how you can be more strategic with your rebates, how you can change mix, how you can grow together. They're going to turn around to you and say, no, Mark, you just focus on getting your numbers right. You know, leave us with the commercial bit, thank you very much. So that is rebating stock.